know our story, I'll share a little bit of it and then introduce Matt. He can share a little bit more. But I was a pastor in Ottawa for 12 years. And about 5 years ago, while I was still pastoring the church, a mutual friend of ours, the chaplain Paul Kern, because he called me up and he said, hey, there's this guy here that is thinking about moving to Ottawa upon his release, and you've got to get to know him. And so Matt and I started just talking on the phone about once every 2 weeks. And then not only myself, but then some members of our church really walked Matt through the kind of process of preparing for life outside the institution as he came to Ottawa.
So my life would have been essentially, because of a lot of my own choices, a lot of things that happened to me was kind of on my own by about the age of 12. We started one of the first gangs in Scarborough before gangs in Scarborough were popular. And and we essentially just started a life of criminality. Life moving forward, where I got involved in the use and distribution of drugs for a period of time in the sex industry, my life culminated when I was part of a network that was supplying a section of Toronto. And this was a $1 million business per year, or multi-million actually. And so we were using these same dynamics, and we always thought we were really good people, and we're the good guys in this world where we've been hard done by. Yet there was always a piece of my heart that was missing, and there was always something that fell short. It didn't matter how much money, in fact, or how much notoriety I had at that point in time. In fact, the more I had, the worse I felt. It culminated with an arrest, and taken down. I was sent to the federal penitentiary. Was exposed to the gospel, and had really tried to work out these ideas of who God is and who God isn't, and without knowing ahead of time, to no avail. And one day I said, I'm going to give this one last shot. I was alone in a cell in Mill Haven Penitentiary. I just cried out to this God of the Old Testament. But I started from day one to evangelize within the prison populations and communities I was involved in, and anybody that was in my sphere of influence just said, hey, I met this God, you need to know him too. Over years, I'm going to fast forward, and over years, a couple of significant things happened. I became trained in ministry and started planting churches while I was in prison, but I also came to the end of myself through consistent failures. So I would come, we would have this, everything is great on the outside, but on the inside, things just weren't great. I just kept falling, and my journey took a lot longer than it needed to be because of that. So when I met Dan, just prior to meeting Dan, I was like, enough's enough. I call it this time where God went from my head into my heart.
Both of us now work in two different, I'd call them missionary networks in the city. Connecting Streams, we work with existing churches trying to mobilize and equip the church to reach society's vulnerable populations, which are normally located outside of the churches. And then we're part of the Ottawa City Church Network, where we're trying to plant churches among kind of the marginalized and poor and vulnerable street-adjacent people in the city. So why don't you talk a little bit about the park?
Our church that Dan and I planted together laid hands on me. I just felt God's call to this neighborhood. I just started going out and sharing the gospel, and then people started coming to faith, and miracles started to happen. And proclamation of faith got to a place where this grew from 1 to 3 to 5. Now we have, literally by God's grace, now we have a supporting team around about 80 people. By God's grace, everybody on the street that is in need knows us. And they're all like, hey, man, hey, how, like it's now a community. It's now a place where by God's grace, in some small way, Jesus Christ, because we don't do this perfectly, is being ministered in and through our lives to this community. But it's becoming a place where not only is Jesus being brought, but then we can take the principles of Paul's ministry of evangelizing, of now establishing people in the first principles of their faith. So now that they've been born again, they need to be trained, so raised up. And small communities of faith are starting to develop where people are starting to mature within them, and they're becoming the second stream of ministry. So this has gone where we're looking at 25 baptisms. Mm-hmm. So something crazy is happening here in this. Where it's
and the partnering.
Yeah.
You've come on with Connecting Streams.
Yeah.
You're going to be leading. You're leading training right now for Addictions Recovery Ministry called Celebrate Recovery at a local church called Peace Tower, which has really embraced you. In mm-hmm. fact, given you a fiance, apparently.
really embrace me.
But even not only those sorts of partnerships, but we're local law enforcement. Individual officers have said, "Hey, we see what you're doing there," and starting to direct people toward you for if there's an intervention that could be happening where they don't have to get involved. You didn't see the people in the park as prospective members of a church that you would plant. You actually saw that community already as, it's already in a sense an ecclesia. It's already a gathering there, but they just needed Jesus. Like, what drives you to be in and working in among these sorts of people?
I'll give you a couple of examples. So this week there's a lady who is an Inuit lady who over the past 4 months has lost 4 of her children, and she had about 11 children. Has lost 4 of her children at separate times to suicide, drug overdose, and alcohol poisoning. And we spent some time on the phone yesterday where literally she was wailing on the phone. And now let me give you the other side of the equation. So a fellow who was getting beaten up and fighting a lot because he was drunk. Another fellow who battles with crack addiction. Somebody else that lost a loved one just a little while ago and was drinking himself to death and was going to jump off a balcony. Now all attend our church. One's not killing themselves, and they say this is because of the intervention of the church. Another is not doing crack and is actually part of our ministry team in the sense of our music ministry. And a third just called me today and said, Pastor, I'm going back to work. I have to fill out the paperwork. I said, do you need some help? He said, no, I know how to do that, but I'm going to ask for Sundays off so that I can be at church.
The other thing is, Matt, you've been doing this work in the park for a year. I don't know how you eat, but you've not taken a dime from the ministry. You've not taken a dime. We don't collect offerings. Some people voluntarily give to the church, but that doesn't go to Matt. It goes to the food that we feed the people with. And so you've been doing this over the last year, not raising a dime for yourself. Now that you've formally come on as a missionary, we are trying to get Matt off the ground as quickly as we can. We literally are trying to raise about $30,000 this month so that we have that cushion, about a 3-month salary for both of us, so that he can begin taking a salary next month when you get married, right? So that's what we're doing, and that's just this month. And we're just asking people if they would consider a one-time gift. They can go to ottawamissionary.com. And that's how you can support us. You can support us monthly. You can support us as a one-time gift to get him up and running. That's about it. You guys know this is our heart, and this is what we've been doing. Now you've heard a little bit more of our story.